The Chicago White Sox are in the middle of a franchise historic losing streak, and somehow the club's leadership reportedly decided not to fire manager Pedro Grifol before the Minnesota Twins series started, a series where the Sox got swept and have now lost 20 straight games. Let's discuss the latest organizational failure that has led to this terrible season next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of Southside Showdown, part of the Fansided Network. You can check out my written content at SouthsideShowdown.com, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox. Also follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, I really do not want to keep discussing the team choosing not to fire Pedro Grifol. I know you're probably like, come on, we're going to do this again. But USA Today's Bob Nightengale reported that owner Jerry Reinsdorf, GM Chris Getz, and the embattled manager huddled last Thursday after the Sox lost 17 straight games. And they had a chance to can him and didn't. Also, I want to discuss it because Steve Greenberg has an excellent column in the Sun-Times discussing what in the world is this leadership team waiting for when it comes to pulling the trigger on firing manager Pedro Grifol. Also, Reinsdorf and Getz decided not to fire Pedro, and he could be fired at any time, according to Nightengale. And it looks like he is as good as gone no matter what once the season is done. But Reinsdorf and Getz not firing Pedro at an opportune time is just the latest example of the biggest reason the Sox are 27-87 and four more straight defeats away from setting the MLB record for most losses in a row. And I want to discuss how the only two logical reasons to keep Grifol around are just the latest example of organizational malpractice and incompetence, as that is the biggest reason why this team is 27-87. Then I've gone over what the lineup should be going forward and the starting rotation going forward. Let's go over what the bullpen should look like the rest of the season and why, if Pedro isn't getting fired before the season is up, the bullpen then must be shaken up. And finally, it's Monday, so let's do the weekly Minor League Monday report. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. All right, the owner and the GM has just let you and I know that this losing streak is acceptable by not firing Pedro Grifol. They have also let you and I know that they love to do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Some might call that insanity. In this instance, I call it incompetence and laziness. Incompetence has put this team in the current terrible state it is in. It is incompetent for an owner who once lucked into a World Series because he had competent people running things. It was incompetent for him to think an unqualified Chris Getz can turn things around quickly. And it is incompetent for Getz to not stand up to Reinsdorf and get him to understand his two reasons to keep Pedro Grifol is foolhardy and pound foolish. And they're the two explanations for owner Jerry Reinsdorf to keep overruling Getz on wanting to fire Pedro Grifol now. And yes, you can tell Getz wants him gone with the 3 chances he's had to say to the media, yep, Pedro's our guy for the rest of the season, and he's basically not giving him an endorsement. The first reason this team is going to be god-awful with or without Pedro Grifol, the first reason why they're going to keep Pedro Grifol is the thinking is this team's going to be god-awful with or without Pedro. So let him ride out the season. Second is Jerry doesn't want to pay Pedro to sit around and do nothing for the next 2 months plus next year. That's organizational malpractice. It is also another example of how lazy this owner is and how cheap he is. And it's also showing no one gets held accountable. This GM and owner have failed so incredibly bad that the franchise is 60 games below 500. And they're not going to hold the third person of this leadership triumvirate accountable for helping the team get to this point. Pedro is 100 games below 500 when it comes to his overall record. 100 games. And he still hasn't been put out of his misery. And this franchise has known nothing but bad under Pedro, and they still won't get him the heck up out of here because of two poor excuses. And also, the Sox think that they can replace Pedro in the offseason with a bigger name, and that's just wishful thinking, like it is to keep Pedro around for 2 more months. Deciding not to fire him on Thursday and let him manage another series, again, more malpractice. A series in which the Twins outscored the Sox 29-11. That's just accepting things can continue to get worse, and it's okay. Let's get into Bob's report, and then let's get into Seth Greenberg's latest column, outlining again why it makes no sense to keep Pedro. Here's what Bob Nightengale said. The Chicago White Sox had a lengthy private meeting Wednesday after their 17th consecutive defeat with owner Jerry Reinsdorf, GM Chris Getz, and manager Pedro Grifol to address a myriad of issues with their woeful team, including Grifol's future. They ultimately decided not to fire him before their weekend series against the Minnesota Twins, while Grifol could still be fired any day or even last until the end of the year if they suddenly start sprinkling in a few victories. The White Sox have no plans to look for a permanent replacement until after the season. Miami Marlins manager Skip Schumacher, who's expected to leave the Marlins after the season, remains the leading candidate for the job. He's also a hot candidate for several other teams who will be looking for a new managers in this winter. So the Sox actually think, this is me editorializing now, the Sox actually think they can beat out the rest of the teams wanting Schumacher, who's trying to escape another dysfunctional franchise. That might be more insane than thinking Pedro was a better manager than Ozzie Guillen. And I love what Steve Greenberg had to say about the situation in the Chicago Sun-Times. Here's what he writes. First, I just want to take an excerpt out of this. First, what are the White Sox waiting for with manager Pedro Grifol? His first Sox team lost 101 games, and his record, and the second one is an almost unfathomable 27-87. If we didn't know months ago that Grifol was in over his head, the whole world can plainly see this man is drowning. There's no chance he'll be back for a third and final year of his contract, and no reason under the sun he should be. If nothing he has done in his first managing job has worked at all, then clearly there's no point in continuing to put him on the next plane to the next city. Side note, Pedro made the flight to Oakland. The only thing more awkward than having Grifol speak for the Sox every day is Grifol doing so and throwing bouquets at owner Jerry Reinsdorf. Before Sunday's loss at the Twins, Grifol told reporters, quote, "Jerry's a winner, okay? He's an absolute winner," end quote. He also called Reinsdorf, quote, "an incredible owner and a man who loves the fans, the same fans who just read this paragraph and want to throw a brick through the nearest window." So think about it. Skip Schumacher is trying to flee a dysfunctional ownership group in Miami. What in God's green earth makes the White Sox think that shadow GM Tony La Russa can just have a conversation and Skip will sign on the dotted line? And I'm not sure Schumacher is an amazing manager. I mean, look at the Marlins this year. Now, yes, they are injury riddled, but they're not exactly playing the most disciplined baseball either. And he did win the 2023 Manager of the Year, so some contender might think, hey, let's pull a Cubs move and just try to upgrade with Skip. Let's pay him the $8-9 million. You think the Sox are going to hand that type of money over to a manager? They once let Jeff Torborg, a very good manager, just walk away because they thought, Gene Lamont's cheaper. And plus, when has this organization ever outbid another team to make a splash hire or signing? Not in this lifetime. Okay, the owner isn't willing to fire the manager. Maybe the GM is willing to fire the bullpen. Let's discuss what the bullpen should look like going forward next on Locked On White Sox. All right, the only way I can get my daughter and wife to go to a ball game is if I buy them the ice cream of the future that they love so much. But sometimes they still get thirsty, and next time I'm going to suggest Liquid IV. When taking in America's pastime, don't forget to hydrate with Liquid IV's Popsicle Firecracker flavor, a surefire summer hit. Get hydrated with electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients from the #1 powdered hydration brand in America. Because baseball and summer go together like Liquid IV and indulgent hydration. I'm getting ready to go to Florida at the end of the week. Going to be humid, and you best believe I'm going to be packing some Liquid IV to stay hydrated. Blast off with the iconic summer flavor of the Popsicle Firecracker, a festive blend of citrus-fueled lemon lime, tart cherry, and raspberry flavors. Pour, Live More. One stick plus 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drinks, 8 essential vitamins and nutrients. No more thirsty summers when you indulge in hydration with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code MLB at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code MLB at liquidiv.com. And thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On MLB podcast. Host Paul Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully, is here daily to provide national expertise with his trademark humor to help you get ready for the MLB playoffs here in the dog days of summer. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day on Locked On MLB, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And the White Sox start a road. The White Sox road trip continues as they start a 3-game series with the Oakland A's tonight. First pitch is at 8:40 p.m. Central. Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. And welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox. Make sure to turn on those notifications. Also, follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Well, the bullpen has got to be shaken up. The White Sox have been outscored 84-40 in the 8th inning alone. And the bullpen is now down Tanner Banks and Michael Kopech after the trade deadline. So that really means no more quality arms. Veterans such as John Brebbia, Steven Wilson, and Chad Kuhl, they no longer have any value to this team. They don't need these veterans on the club. Especially Brebbia and Wilson. They just keep giving up runs like they do not understand their job description. The fact that the front office has tried minor alterations to this pen during the losing streak is just baffling. And they just do a call up here, a little stitching there. Do a full-scale shakeup at this point. You're 60 games under 500, and after poor organizational leadership, a bad bullpen is a big reason the club is in this mess. For example, the Sox actually put up 7 runs heading into the bottom of the 8th yesterday. They were still within striking distance with the score at 10-7. And Wilson surrenders 3 more runs for game over. Sorry, I got a little itch on my nose. And I wrote about this on Southside Showdown, but I have to make some alterations as after I published it, Drew Thorpe went on the IL. And suddenly lefty rookie Kai Bush is going to start tonight. And he was one of my choice for one of the lefty reliever spots. So since the Sox are not really winning, they might not even need a closer at all. But, if you had to designate someone as the closer, my choice, and now granted it's looking like a poor choice, but my choice would be Prelander Baroa to fill the closer spot. Now, hear me out. I know you're like, man, he was terrible over the weekend, but just hear me out. Hear me out before you go into the comments and go, what are you thinking, Todd? You're an idiot. You're wrong. It's just based off the potential of his stuff. I mean, he can throw nearly 100 miles an hour, and he's got a slider to go with it. Now, at PF Arden 3163, he had a comment the other day on the YouTube community that Addison Coffey should be up. And I agree after looking over his numbers. And he could be a candidate to be a closer too, as he has 9 saves in Charlotte. Either way, he's a guy that I'm calling up. And if he's not my closer, he's my high leverage right-handed pitcher, number 1. And also that is the change from the piece I published. Because again, when I published it, about 20 minutes later, Drew Thorpe went on the IL. So now I'm going to bring up Coffey instead. And it also means I'm swapping him out for Anthony Hoopy Tuanta. I believe I pronounced that right. All right. So then who's the other high leverage arms? Fraser Ellard. He was just called up. He did give up 2 runs in his first pro outing against the Kansas City Royals, and it was a high leverage situation. Failed to protect that lead. But I think that was big league jitters. He was also solid over the weekend. He did have a 3.76 ERA and a 1.33 WHIP at AAA Charlotte. So one bad outing is not a reason to scrap on seeing if he can be an effective bullpen arm down the road. Trey McGuff. Yeah, Trey McGuff. Another high leverage arm that I would use in a high leverage situation. He's the guy that they got for Eloy Jimenez in that trade with Baltimore. And he might be better than some of the bullpen arms the team currently has on it right now. He has a 2.08 ERA at AAA. I don't know why they're sending him to Charlotte already. Designate Brebbia for assignment and give McGuff a shot. That's just what I would do. The left-handed high leverage arm, right now I'm going to put Jake Eder then. That's where I had Kai Bush. And yes, his numbers have not been great at AA and AAA, but again, he still has loads of potential. They already thought he was worth at least a one-day cup of coffee call-up. Try saying that fast 3 times. Now, you could also bring up Garrett Chanelli, I believe I pronounced that right, to fill that spot, as he has a 2.23 ERA at AA. And he did just recently earn a promotion to AAA, so either one. You can go with one of those two. The left-handed low-leverage arm, I'll use Jared Schuster. I mean, and the only reason why I'm still giving him a shot, because he's just been very inconsistent this year. But the years of club control, that's a big reason why I would still give him a shot. But again, you could put Eder or Chanelli or Scoanelli. I'm sorry if I'm butchering his name. I tried to look up the pronunciation. You could put one of those guys there instead, because they're both lefties. In terms of low leverage, long relief arm for a righty, Sean Burke. He's been starting at AAA Charlotte since working his way back from a shoulder injury. They're not the greatest there, but again, you got to remember when you're looking at Charlotte, when you're looking at the pitchers in Charlotte, that is not an easy park to pitch at. From what it's been described to me when I talk to like future Sox, when I talk to Ian Eskridge, for example, when he was on the show a couple weeks ago, he was saying, it's not an easy place to pitch, and think of it, it's like Coors Field without the thin air allowing the ball to fly out of the ballpark, how it's got those dimensions. And I think he should have gotten the call up to the bigs instead of Touki Toussaint. However, I'm sure he might be still working his way into form, but he is 24 and he has a blank slate at the big league level. And Tuki's just a guy who keeps getting DFA'd or cut out of spring training. I'd rather go with Burke than Touki, even though, again, I love the name Touki Toussaint. You might be thinking, going with all these arms in the minors will deplete, AAA and AA Birmingham. Well, okay. Those teams' records do not matter. As I've said, winning at the minor league level does not matter. Development does. Winning matters at the big league level, and right now, the White Sox are not winning, and a big reason is because their bullpen cannot protect leads. The other low-leverage, long relief arm I'd go with is Chad Kuhl, and this is another one that I have changed after Thorpe was hurt. I had Chris Flexen here. Basically, the only reason why I had him there was, hey, let's just have him back up the innings that Garrett Crochet doesn't get to, because it looks like they're clearly now having him pitch 4 innings, because that's all he did on Saturday. And I'm sure they're going to be shutting him down soon, but with, Thorpe out now, they need someone to eat some innings. Although Flexen got absolutely destroyed again yesterday. I mean, he put him in, I believe, an 8-0 hole. Like, that game was over by the second inning. But the funny thing is and it's like almost old takes exposed. I did a short about saying, like, it's just looking like they're accepting losing because you did. You could see that. I think I recorded the short after the second inning. And then, of course, the offense comes back at least and puts up 7 runs. But could the bullpen keep them within striking distance? Heck, no. And I'd still DFA Flexen and actually call up Mason Adams to fill his spot in the rotation. There's no reason to have Chris Flexen on this team anymore. He hasn't won a game since May? And all he keeps doing is he keeps putting guys on base every inning. And then you got to hope like heck he can limit the damage. And recently, he's not limiting the damage. He literally put the team in an 8-0 hole. Game was practically over by the second inning. So I'm just going to go with Kuhl because he has a 3.48 ERA. He's probably one of the few guys that you can at least trust right now to get some outs. You could say, what about Justin Anderson? I'm tired of seeing Justin Anderson. All I see him do whenever I turn it on, and I turn it on a lot, obviously. I've been watching the games. Whenever he's out there, whenever I see him, he's giving up runs. Everybody in this bullpen is giving up runs. I don't know why this team is so resistant. Unless, the pitching guru, Brian Bannister, who I trust very much, is saying, look, some of these guys, they're just not going to be able to get outs in the big leagues. They just don't have the stuff. The numbers are fine at AAA, but they're probably not going to get the outs. Then fine. You could say, well, what about Noah Schultz? I'll get to him in the next segment, as it is Monday. And you know what I like to do every Monday? Provide a minor league Monday report, because that's where the hope is. So let's discuss the minor leagues, what happened last week, next on Locked On White Sox. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the PrizePicks community today. And with PrizePicks, you can turn $10 into $1,000 while watching Team USA. Rack up the gold medals this summer. You can make a PrizePicks lineup of players across basketball, soccer, tennis, golf, and more in as little as 60 seconds. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you're locked in. And that's how easy it is to play PrizePicks. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including Illinois, Wisconsin, and Indiana. My college buddy on the text chain always telling me how much he loves playing PrizePicks because he lives behind the cheddar curtain. I think it is great for how simple of a concept it is. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKDOWNMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKDOWNMLB on PrizePicks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And the White Sox road trip continues as they start a 3-game series with the Oakland A's tonight. First pitch is at 8:40 p.m. Central. Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. And welcome back into Locked On White Sox. I am your host, Todd Welter. Thank you for sticking with me through this far of the show. Love you everydayers. Love the community we're building on the YouTube page, especially. Although I had a couple commentators that, man, I want to be like, why is everybody so angry? And they accuse me of being thin-skinned. Okay, so first of all, if you start a comment saying I'm wrong or I'm an idiot, be prepared to defend yourself. And it's not being thin-skinned. I literally had a guy, and I had to hide the comment because it was just, at that point, I was debating him, and he was just continuing being so ridiculous. I had a guy that literally said, the risk of, my thinking was wrong, that the White Sox didn't get, should have traded with the division rival, because you should not make your division rival better. The White Sox shouldn't have traded Eric Fetty to a division rival because it makes them better. Well, the White Sox are 60 games under 500. Eric Fetty's under team control for a year and a half. And the Twins are having no trouble, as I keep saying over and over again. I feel like a broken record. The Twins have had no trouble beating the Sox without Eric Fetty. And then he was like, oh, that prospect could have been a risk. Okay, so then why trade for any prospects? You're a rebuilding team. The best way to get better is to get young talent. And there's always risks. That's like, saying, well, don't play the stock market because you can lose money. Well, it's the best way to, get your 401k up. Sorry. Anyways, catching prospect, just anyways, I will challenge you on that. Think of it this way. You're allowing me into your house. I hopefully am being a good guest. When you come on and make comments, you're now coming into my house. If you come into my house and say, basically just come in, start drinking, come into my fridge, start drinking my drinks, grabbing the chips, going on the couch and just spreading crumbs everywhere. Don't be mad if I'm like, what are you doing? You're messing up my house. Okay? That's the way I look at it. I'm not trying to mess up your house. And if you disagree, we can have a disagreement. And they're on the comments. Okay, guys? We can have disagreements. That's fine. Let's just do it respectfully. That's it. Keyboard warriors, before saying you're an idiot, how about just say, you know what? I disagree because of X, Y, and Z. Fine. We can do that. Think of it that way. This country would be so much better if people just said, I disagree. 1, 2, 3. Anyways, catching prospect Edgar Caro and pitching prospect Noah Schultz, they keep showing that they have a great chance of being studs at the big league level. Caro is hitting like he is ready for a call-up now. I doubt he gets it, as one of the speculated reasons is the Sox do want to preserve his Rookie of the Year chances, and he definitely has the potential to do that. And if he wins it, say in 2025, you get that extra draft pick in 2026. So I get the long-term thinking. And Schultz, they're being careful with, and they're smart to do so since he has the potential to be an ace. And you don't want to risk any injury to a potential ace arm, especially since Bob Nightengale also reported the Sox are still motivated to trade Garrett Crochet in the offseason. And guys like Schultz and now having Hagen Smith, I think is the reason why they're motivated to do that, because they feel like, hey, we got the replacement right there. We got two of them, you know? Caro had himself a series for AAA Charlotte against Norfolk over the weekend. He did go 0 for 3 in the first game and then went 7 for 15 with a home run, 5 RBIs, and 2 walks. His slash line in the past 10 games is 302, 429, 524. His overall slash line at AAA is 305, 423, 525. That is a 948 OPS, ladies and gentlemen. Noah Schultz's line for his weekly Saturday outing was 3 2/3 innings, no runs, 1 hit, 2 walks, and 5 Ks. Teams are hitting 197 off of him. And I like the approach the team is taking with him in terms of making sure he's refining his pitches, easing him into an innings workload. Let's not overtax him. He's 21. You still got time. I would like to see them maybe ramp him up next year, and maybe he's hopefully here by mid-season of 2025. How did Jarrell Perez and William Bergolla do? Two of the 3 young prospects the Sox got at the trade deadline. The other one, Alex Urbertus, is the other, but he's on the IL with a broken leg. Well, Perez, he's at low A Kannapolis. He had 3 hits in his first 2 games, but went 0 for 6 in the final 2 games of the weekend series. Bergolla is at a high A Winston-Salem. Picked up a hit in each of his 3 games. So, encouraging. And Beef Loaf from the 108.com, he had a great piece up outlining that Chris Getz might actually have a profile when it comes to hitters, and maybe that's why he got some of these guys at the trade deadline. He outlined on Fangraphs, the Fangraphs White Sox farm system rankings, when it comes to pitch selection ratings and bat control ratings, the new guys rate high in that category. And also when it comes to pitch selection, Colson Montgomery, Edgar Caro, Brian Ramos, and Jacob Gonzalez, they have excellent ratings in that area. And Caro is in the top 4 for bat control. So maybe, just maybe, there's a vision of getting hitters who can control the strike zone. Now all you have to do is get them to consistently launch the ball to fit guaranteed rate field and also consistently hit the ball. You don't want to look at Colson Montgomery and Jacob Gonzalez's average right now. It's still not good. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On MLB podcast. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day. You can find the link to Locked On MLB in the description, so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I'll be back tomorrow, and if the Sox lose, it means they'll have tied the 1988 Baltimore Orioles 21 straight defeat mark. I'll make sure to do another check-in in terms of where the Sox compare at this point with their other peers then in badness, although I'm efforting to get a guest on tomorrow or Wednesday, so that could change things. And then also remember, at the end of the week, I push back my trip. I am going to Florida, going to Disney on August 9th through the 16th. So I will be having a fan series going on during that week. I got some great guests lined up, and you're going to love it, hopefully, while I'm gone. So if you want, feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding management not firing Pedro Grifol after meeting with him last week, revamping the bullpen, and the Minor League Monday report. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X/formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dubb, or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. I'll talk to you tomorrow.